Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Entrepreneurs Podcast. Today I have a special guest, Michaela Corning, joining us from Seattle today. Instead of me introducing what she does, I would like to give her the opportunity because she does it better, much better than me. Assalamu Sister Michaela. Welcome to the show.
Alaikum salam. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. So where should I start?
Say again?
Where should I start?
From the very beginning. So the first question usually I ask people is, so why don't we just start quick, let's start with a start intro about what you do first, and we can jump back to, inshallah, to your childhood, early memories, if you don't mind. Tell us what you do these days. What are you up to these days?
Sure. So like Maruf said, my name is Michaela Corning, and you can probably tell from the name that I was not born to a Muslim family. So I converted to Islam in the late 90s. I live in Seattle, Washington. This is where I was born and raised. And I have a modest fashion brand that bears my name, michaelacorning.com. And then I also opened a women-only salon and boutique called Baraka Beauty Collective. And we are a nonprofit, and we're also located here in Seattle. And yeah, just me and my cat family right now.
Yeah, that's what I was going to tell you. Can you introduce us the beautiful lady on your right
Pepper.
side?
This is Pepper, and in my lap is Mimi, and they're sisters. And Zuki, who is somewhere, is Pepper's baby, but he probably won't make an appearance. But the girls love to be on camera, so
yeah, it's gonna be a cat show. It's gonna be a cat show. Alhamdulillah. You know, this reminds me the story of the companion Abu Huraira. He used to love cats, right? It's even his name means the father of kittens. So he's going to be Huraira today, the mother of kittens in the show. For the kittens.
Yeah, exactly. And instead of Khaleesi, the mother of dragons, or Khaleesi, I'm the mother of ginger kitties.
Beautiful.
Pepper is really good.
Beautiful. Bismillah. So, Michaela, why don't we start? One of the first questions I usually ask is, what we're trying to unpack here is that your life's journey, and hopefully we can inspire upcoming sisters, some brothers as well. Why not? The idea is, when you look back to childhood, what are the early memories you remember, like fond memories? And I mean, there are a lot of memories, but I think the angle I'm asking is that, did you see any angle like looking back and connecting the dots to where you are today when you look at your childhood in that sense?
Well, yeah, 100%. I mean, I think the older you get, the more you realize that everything is Allah's qadr, everything is destiny, and you are exactly where you need to be. So I was born in the 70s. This is before the internet, before cell phones. We were forced to play outside. The last time I played a video game was in the 80s when we had an Atari. So if that gives anybody, I know, right? So I'm going
first generation of computers.
Way back, yeah, pre-Nintendo. I was born to, basically second generation German immigrants. So my grandparents, like 3 of my 4 grandparents immigrated here from Germany. And so, we are very German family, German American, with a little smattering of Irish in there. On one of my grandfather's side, I was born on a ranch. So my family had tens of thousands of acre ranch here in Washington. We were cattle farmers, or not cattle farmers, I should say cattle ranchers. And my dad, was a legitimate cowboy. And that's where I was born and raised. And when my parents got divorced in the early 80s, my sister and my mom and we moved here to Western Washington on the other side of the mountains, which is the Seattle area. And I grew up on an island called Vashon Island, which is very, very hippie dippy trippy, I usually say, place to grow up. And I was always that different kid, I would say, in a lot of ways. A popular kid, but a different kid. And what I mean by that is that Allah put in my heart from a very early age an interest in people that were different than me.
Interesting.
And so I think, again, this goes back to thinking about Allah's qadr. And I don't think that I would have been interested in Islam if Allah had not put in my heart an interest in people that primarily looked different than me, right? And so growing up first in Eastern Washington, which is predominantly white and Hispanic, all of my friends were mostly Mexican kids because that was what I was drawn to. I wanted to know the kids that looked different than me. And so when we moved to Vashon Island, which is predominantly white, there's like really, especially at that time, it was just very homogenous. That was my first question to my mom. I said, where are all the Mexicans, Mom? Because those are my people. Those are my friends. And she's like, well, we don't live in Eastern Washington anymore. But that interest in people that look different than me is ultimately what led me to be interested in Islam. That was what led me to learn about other cultures, other faith groups. And
interesting.
Yeah. And so I remember at a very young age, like, instead of going to the internet and looking for things, we would go to the library. And I would go to the library on Vashon Island and I would check out music, mostly from Africa, and on cassette tapes. And I mean, I didn't have any African friends or anything. I honestly can't even tell you where I got these ideas, but I'm like, and there is this group called Ladysmith Black Mambazo. And I just like, if you even know the music, I'll have to send you a link, Maruf, but these are the things that I was interested in at a very young age, and just learning about different cultures and different groups. So one of the families on the island that I grew up on, they were not only the only African-American family on the island, but they were like one of the only Muslim families, and they were our neighbors. And that was my first introduction to Islam when I was 10 years old, was that family.
Interesting. Yeah. Interesting. We'll get back to that story, you're coming to Islam, but I think, so what you're saying is from the early age, you were drawn to this different cultures, different people. That's interesting.
Yep.
I like that.
100%. And that, I mean, my sister isn't necessarily like that. No one else in my family is like that. Like, I just was always very intrigued by people that looked different than me, who spoke different languages. And that's something that I did not put in myself. It's something that God put in me. And, subhanAllah, I mean, I grew up, upper middle class, European American family, riding horses, going camping, going boating, fishing. Like, that's what I grew up in. That's, I wasn't like an inner city kid or a kid living in the city. Like, I was definitely somebody, living on a ranch.
Ranch and suburbs, yeah.
I mean, like, I was born in a city that I didn't grow up in because that city was the closest that had a hospital.
I see. I got you.
Right.
So, coming back to your story, right? Like, about 10 years old, you are figuring this out. Tell us about your high school, maybe college. Like one of the questions a lot of people struggle in life is that, how do I find out what I really care about, right? And when I look at you, that I see that, alhamdulillah, and very few people have, is that people do what they really love, and then I think really appreciate about you is that, I know we'll come to that story, but before that, looking back to your high school and college years, did you find your calling at the time, like, was it easy for you, or it took, like many of us, it took us, sometimes tens of years,
So I would say yes and no. So when I was in high school, in the US, we're required to take classes in foreign language, which is way too late doing it in high school, but that's another conversation. And the first foreign language that I took in high school was French. And then I took that for a couple of years. And then I started taking Spanish as well. And that is, I think, what kind of hooked me into language and travel, and really, like, even expanding further and like being interested in again, cultures and people that were maybe different than me. And I say that because when I went to college early. I actually went to college as a senior in high school. I went full time as a senior in high school to college, and I was taking French and Spanish and like other college level courses. And that's when I realized that was what I was passionate about, language. And so, yeah. So I have a double degree, which is different than a double major. A double major is like one diploma that says double major, but a double degree is actually two separate degrees, and it's a whole nother year of credit. So I have a BA in Spanish, and a BA in linguistics. And
Okay.
and so the linguistics is the scientific study of language. My concentration was on Romance languages, which basically the Romance languages are the ones that are based on Latin. And part of that was taking two Romance languages. So I took French and Spanish till 500 level. And then I took so much Spanish, and then I lived in Mexico. So I ended up getting another degree in Spanish. And so those are my undergrads. And I'm mentioning that because I went to school and studied what I was passionate about.
Which was languages, the culture.
Language. Yeah, language and ultimately culture, because obviously with a lot of these classes, like these things are intertwined. And I remember at the time I had some family members, not close family members, that were like, oh, what are you going to do? Be a teacher? As if that was like some sort of
downgrading.
It was like, yeah, it was like a downgrade in my degree, or like an insult or something. And I said, no, I'm not going to be a teacher. Like that definitely wasn't my calling. And again, I was so passionate about it. I ended up taking like Spanish for business and French for business, so that there was definitely like business angles. And because my degree, my other degree was in linguistics, and I took a lot of like Spanish linguistics and French linguistics classes, plus, general linguistics classes. At University of Washington, when you're taking classes that have a science angle, you can actually get science credit for them. So many of the classes I was taking actually got me science credits. Things like semantics and phonology and phonetics and things like that have definitely have a scientific angle to them. So, and so my whole point in saying that is that was ultimately like, that was what I was passionate about. I went to school for that. And my whole corporate career in outside sales and client services started because I spoke Spanish. I would never have gotten that job in the telecommunications industry, working with the largest, cell phone or carriers, wireless carriers in the world, if I had not known Spanish. They needed someone who spoke Spanish to deal with their clients in Venezuela. And I was only one of two people who applied for this job that spoke Spanish. And so that's why I got the job, a big part of it.
But, I mean, there are couple of things right away, right? The first of all, it's not only, I think, Americans, but every nation by default, every human being by default, we are not we're always kind of a bit worried about the strangers. The strange culture, new culture, it depends how you do it. But in your case, this was the first thing. For you, you weren't running away, you were running towards that strangeness culture. Yeah, 100%. Number two is when you said, I learned languages, right? Even so, languages are the doors to those cultures, right? Spanish and French. So you are opening those doors. And that's also another strange thing, especially from if you're from US, most of the people, they only speak English, right? They don't necessarily learn another language. But in your case, you had this advantage of French and Spanish, and now it got you a job, as you said. So we will, I'm just noticing things because those things, like sometimes we speak about things fast, then even some people said, why you learn languages? In your case, it doesn't matter. I do what I love, and then the rest will connect. We'll figure out. It doesn't have to be yet.
That's what I tell kids that are in high school. Don't think about the job. Go to school for what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about engineering, great. But if you're not, you're going to make maybe a bunch of money and then you're going to be miserable. You could go to school for what you're passionate about, and it's going to work out. Like there's so many different types of careers and jobs and everything. You don't have to just think about the end result, because in reality, I went into sales, and salespeople tend to make a lot more money than engineers. So, what I'm talking about.
By speaking language.
Exactly. So stop thinking about the job and start thinking about what you're passionate about. And I think that's also where we do a lot of disservice to young people. And I'm very thankful for my parents, because they did not finish college, and they just really wanted my sister and I to finish college. And they knew that education was really important. And they never said, oh, why are you getting a degree in Spanish? they were like, that's amazing. Like, we're so proud of you. And my sister was really passionate about medicine. So she became an ER doctor. And, you know, we never felt that. I mean, I
You're
also
being
don't.
pressured
Yeah, no,
against,
no. We definitely were like, you're going to college, but we weren't pressured to go in a specific field. And I think that that's something that our Muslim communities just really do disservice for their kids.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Some of the people, they push their kids to be engineer, a doctor, or a lawyer. This is where the money is. I understand where they're coming from, because some of them may think, oh, if you learn language, what are you going to do? They're learning psychology, what you going to do? But I think this is because of their lack of knowledge, because anything actually you do really, really well, especially liberal arts like language and psychology, etc. You can end up doing, you know, it's about humans. It's about human and emotional intelligence. Any big corporation tells you, if you master those skills, you can be managing engineers, basically.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So,
And in fact, language, like the arts and these are actually considered more difficult areas of study, but that's a whole conversation for another day.
that's true. We're not going to go dive into that. So after your college, you mentioned the degrees, double degrees. You got in a telecommunication. You worked there for a few years. Would you say is at that time you kind of was discovering Islam in a way, or is it later point? Like when is the time you? I remember you mentioned, right? It was 90s. You mentioned, right?
I became Muslim in 99, and
what was the story like? What was it like? I know it takes a lot of courage, especially for women, right? Because you have to. It's not just for me. I can be Muslim. You would not know me like if I'm a male, right? But to be a woman and putting a hijab, it takes a lot of courage. So it's not just easy decision, I would say.
Yeah, so I mean, my first introduction to Islam was when I was 10, because our neighbors were Muslim, and their father, Zayd Abdulaziz, he was an ex-Sonics basketball player, so he was an NBA before. Okay. And their mother was originally, I think her family is from Trinidad, and then she grew up in Canada, and she also converted to Islam. And like I said, they were like the only African-American family on the island, and they were our neighbors. And so because they looked different than us, we knocked on the door and we wanted to play with their kids. My sister and I, right? And so I was very intrigued and fascinated by their beliefs. And so I remember just, you know, different things I would ask Miriam about, you know, why don't you have a picture of God on your wall? And she's like, we don't know what he looks like. And I'm like, you know, stuff like that. Because in my mind, Jesus was God. So I remember her showing me her Quran and telling me, and I was like, you can read that? Because to me, it looks like it's illegible, right?
Exactly.
It's clearly illegible to someone who only knows English. And so, you know, there was a lot of things that she said as a 10-year-old to me that again, these are just like little seeds that were like planted in my heart. I remember because we played basketball together, me and Miriam, and, you know, she started wearing hijab in basketball, and kids would like make fun of her, and then I would like defend her. And, you know, and that process of me like trying to educate or defend her, I think made me start like, you know, kind of just, again, like those are just seeds planting in my heart about Islam, like not necessarily having a really big disdain or something in my heart about Islam, but just, you know, having a certain amount of knowledge. And then later when I went to college, when I was a senior in high school, like I said, I went to college early, and one of the classes I took was Middle Eastern history.
Interesting.
Yeah. And in that class,
why that class specifically? Do you remember?
God, I do not know, but my professor was also my poli-sci professor, and he was just this old guy. He was super funny. I remember in the poli-sci class, he told us, which is funny because later when I went to work in market research and in the research industry, it always came back to me. So he used to tell us in poli-sci, he's like, there's 3 kinds of lies, damn lies, and statistics. And so anybody who's ever worked in research knows what he's talking about. And in fact, when I first started working in the research industry, one of my managers had that quote on his desk. And I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize that my professor was actually quoting somebody else when he said that. I don't really know, but I did a report on ancient Egypt, and as part of that process, I learned a little bit about Islam. Although my report was, I think, really more about like the pharaohs and like really ancient Egypt. And then
we think.
Yeah, and then but when you're researching Egypt, like you're going to learn about Islam, in the process. And then the thing that was more distinct to me was that the professor brought in somebody to talk to us about Islam. And this particular guy that I remember, he was someone who had converted to Islam, and if my memory serves me correctly, he was living in Saudi Arabia. And I don't remember 99% of what he talked about, but I do remember two distinct things that, again, additional seeds that were planted. One is that he talked about why we as Muslims do not believe that Jesus is the Son of God. And he said that, God just says kun fayakun. God says be, and things come into existence from nothing. He doesn't have to be the father of that thing. And then saying he has, that he's a father is making him like a human, and he's not a human. And so that was like very distinct to me. And then the other thing is he talked about the hijab, which wasn't really a very religious viewpoint on it. He was kind of talking about it more from a cultural perspective. But for me, the takeaway from the conversation about hijab was that more about the fact that me as a Westerner, or me as somebody who does not practice that at that time, I can't look at another culture and put my viewpoint on the things they do and be like, oh, they do it for this reason. They're going to tell me the reason they do whatever they do. And in this case, hijab. And so it just made me kind of open up my eyes to not be so prejudicial on people's cultures that I'm not a part of. Right. And so, and I think, now that I kind of look back at it, especially with all the challenges we've had in community around convert programming and care, that it was really smart of the professor to bring someone in to talk about Islam to non-Muslims who had himself converted to Islam, because
he would know the context. He would know the context much better.
He understands where our mindset is, right? He understands our mindset. He speaks English as a native speaker. He's like, there's not going to be a barrier to understanding what he's saying that's unnecessary, right? And so, that was very wise of the professor to be able, because, and I think this is a mistake we make all the time in our communities, is that when we do Dawah events or Islam 101 events, that we don't bring in converts. And those converts they do not have to be white people. They can be Black, Hispanic, whatever, but like bring in some representation of people from actual community. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. And that's part of our sunnah too, subhanAllah. Like if you think about the delegations of who Prophet Muhammad, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, who he sent out to spread Islam, or who he sent out, to talk with the Abyssinian king, he brought the people that were the most eloquent, the people who would speak to those people and they would understand. So it's a lot of takeaways from that. So that was my second introduction to Islam when I was 17. And then my final introduction to Islam was when I was about 22. I met a bunch of students. I was already graduated from college at this point. I was kind of like typical college, like I just graduated, I'm working a retail job. I'm like, what am I going to do with my life? Where am I going to work? What am I going to do? And this is in the year 1998, actually. Beginning of 1998. Yeah. I'd been graduated for about 6 months at this point. I was still working like a retail job, and I met a bunch of students from Kuwait, from the Emirates, but mostly from Kuwait. And that was my final, like very like clear introduction to the faith. Really seeing people like practice it, live it, a mixture of different guys, mostly that, some were more practicing than others. But one of my friends who I'm still friends with to this day, he was very good in English. I mean, he got a PhD in mechanical engineering and now he's a professor at Kuwait University, but he was able to like explain things to me, especially because he was kind of like a self-study in comparative religion.
Mm-hmm.
So he's somebody who like read the Bible and like he just was very into that at a young age. And so when I would ask him questions about things, he could really like explain them to me very, very well. And then when something like was very specific or like focused on women, he would like ask his mother. And so that was like super beneficial. And yeah, I mean, I would say that like there's a handful of guys that were definitely instrumental in me really looking at Islam. And I think the first part of it for me, honestly, wasn't even about the faith. It was more about unpacking some of my stereotypes about Arabs.
Interesting. Actually, I was going to ask you a quick question here, if you don't mind. Because even though when you were 10 and later on you mentioned about Jesus being on the wall, I want to understand a little bit about your religious background, even young age, later age. So do you come from a religious family, or it was just very free, you can learn, but not, there are different families. Like, so what kind of family do you grow up and how much religious knowledge do you have? That's what I'd like to know. So just for the context,
Yeah, 100%. So I was baptized Catholic. So my dad's side of the family, my grandmother, like they were very Catholic. My dad went to parochial school. He went to, Catholic school as a kid. But he had such a negative experience that he was kind of anti-religion. He wasn't anti-God, but he was definitely anti-religion. But very like, ethical, moral, like many of the things that I believed in from an ethics and morality and sort of life perspective was very Islamic, but my dad just didn't know that's what he was teaching me, was Islamic values. And I've actually thought about kind of writing a book about that, because this is a big misnomer that people have in our community. When people convert to Islam, a lot of times they see Islam as a continuation of their values, even if they don't come from a religious background, that Islam just basically says like, oh, all the values that my parents taught me are the same in Islam. The only thing I'm missing is Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. That's just all I'm missing, right? And so although my father was definitely kind of like anti-Catholic because of, he was left-handed and he was born in the 40s. And so being left-handed, going to Catholic school, they used to tie his hand behind his back and try to force him to write with his right hand. It's crazy. Wow. They used all kinds of stuff. And so my mother's side of the family was Protestant. So Presbyterian, Lutheran. I don't really remember going to church when my parents were married. I remember more going to church after they got divorced. And so we would go to church relatively regularly with my mom, but I think that I was probably knew a little bit more about Christianity than the average American, but I definitely wasn't like, I never really referred to myself as a Christian or anything like that, even though that's what I grew up in. It just wasn't, I wouldn't say that we were like a super religious or faithful family, like my immediate nucleus, I guess. And in fact, one of my earliest memories is when my sister and I, my parents were still married, when we were living in Eastern Washington, we had gone to a neighbor's, and I think that they might have been like Jehovah's Witness or something.
Okay.
And they had given us, my sister and I were like 6, 7 or something. We were very young. And they'd given us these really tiny little Bibles. And when we got home, they were babysitting us. And when we got home, my dad was furious. He was furious that somebody would give his daughters these Bibles. And I will never forget, my dad said, "Nobody will teach my daughters religion," and he threw them in the fire. I was like, wow.
Nobody teach. Can you repeat that, what he said?
He said, "Nobody is going to teach my daughters religion except for me." And he threw the Bibles in the fire.
Oh, I see.
He was very mad.
He must have really bad experience. I can see that.
Yeah, I think it was not just that, but also like, who are you to like
teach? Yeah.
He was just decision. Yeah, for sure. So
let's see.
Yeah, so those are some of my early memories. I mean, my dad's mother was a very devout Catholic, and she was, when I became a Muslim, she was actually probably my biggest supporter when it came to me being a Muslim, even though she was like the most, Catholic devoted like person of faith that I knew. She was very, and I have lots of funny stories about her being very supportive. And then later when I got married, she was also very supportive of my husband and I, when some people in my family just were very not supportive. But that's,
may God bless her. May God bless her.
Yeah, seriously. She died in 2011. So she's actually the one who paid for me to go study abroad in Mexico. So she was just very, very supportive person. But yeah, so I come from a typical, I think, American Christian background, but not like super religious, but also not people who celebrate Christmas and know nothing about it. So I think, kind of in the middle.
It was, I get. So coming back to the story with the Kuwaiti people, so why this time you're asking this question? Like this time you said it was this final thing. This is what you do. What was it?
What's really interesting is, like I said, I wasn't thinking about religion at that point. I think the first part of the process for me was really kind of like unpacking a lot of my stereotypes about Arabs.
That's right.
Yeah. And so it started with that. It started with like, wow, these people are not like what I thought they would be like. And I think they're
not blowing things up.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't even really think that. I think it's hard for me to really think about it. But what's interesting is that, I grew up in a time where, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have social media where we're just bombarded with like media, or bombarded with imagery or news, propaganda. But so I didn't grow up with that, but I grew up with certain things that obviously, that are subconscious, and it shows you how strong the subconscious subliminal messaging is. So if you go back to like the 70s, 80s, 90s, and think about the media's portrayal or movies portrayal of Arabs, some of the very first imagery that I was exposed to as a child. So we used to watch like Popeye cartoons, and they had Ali Baba and the 40 Thieves as part of those cartoons. And they were these really grotesque caricatures of Arabs with like the very protruded hook nose, very angry. That is like the only imagery that I got as a young child about Arabs, right? It's just very negative. And then I, even just things like, which I didn't realize until later, but these are subconscious. Like even in the Back to the Future movie, if you have ever seen that movie, who are the terrorists in the end? They're like Libyan or something, with the machine guns. Like this is the typical. There's actually a book called The Real Arab, like REEL, about the movies and media portrayal of Arabs like at that time frame.
Interesting.
And so even though it's not like now in terms of how much we consume, it was enough to shape my mental map around who Arabs were. And I had a lot of prejudices that I didn't realize. And then as I started learning about Islam, there's a few things that I remember very early on. I remember one time being at these guys' house, and it was time for Dhuhr prayer. Dhuhr or Asr, I don't remember.
Okay.
And I didn't know anything about Muslim prayer. I don't think I'd ever seen Muslims pray before. And here's all these like 20-something-year-old college kids, mostly Kuwaiti, a few Emirati. And one of them is like, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And I'm like, what's going on? And they all like gather into the living room and they pray in Jama'ah together. And I'm just like, I was so fascinated. Like it actually like really moved my heart to see these young men standing in congregation at their house, praying together and bowing down. And I just thought, oh my God, that's worship. That is worship to me. And it was very, very moving. And so I had a lot of those kind of moments over the course of about, I guess, like a year and a half, because I met them in like January of 98. And then I became Muslim in November of 99. So it was about a little over a year and a half after. And like I said, I really had no interest in becoming Muslim, but it just like kind of built on itself. And then, yeah, I remember kind of close to when I ended up becoming Muslim, one of my friends, I remember we were driving somewhere, and I don't know how we got on the topic, but I told her, I was like, I really wish that I had the same level of faith in God as these friends of mine.
Mm.
That level is just something that I did not grow up with. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, well, we believe in God, but they know there's a God.
Mm.
And there is a difference between believing and knowing.
Mm.
And I think that I was making a dua that I didn't know, and Allah answered that dua, subhanAllah. And
Beautiful.
I also like a couple things kind of right before. So my friend that I mentioned before, and then his friend who I ended up marrying later. So my now husband, they bought me a book by Ahmed Deedat, if you know that scholar.
Yeah, of course. South Africa. He was a great da'i.
Yeah, he was a great guy. Yeah. So he wrote a book called Islam versus Christianity, The Choice.
Okay.
And it wasn't very easy to come by then. Okay. So there was 2 volumes to it. And these 2 guys, they bought me, Ra'id and Salih, they bought me this book. And I was very intrigued by it. So Ahmed Deedat, al-Rahma, he basically proves Islam from the Bible.
That's true.
And so I, being my like academic linguistic self, I went and bought a Bible because he's quoting the Bible. So I buy the same version of the Bible that he's quoting.
Mm.
And every time he quotes something, I was like, the Bible says that? That's so confusing to me. And so I went to the Bible, I'd look it up, and I'd like highlight it. And I was like, wow, okay, like he's not lying, right? Because I'm like looking at things very analytically. And he talks a lot about language in his proof of Islam and the proof of the Quran, which again, because of my linguistic and language background, and I learned about the evolution of the Spanish language and how Arabic actually influenced Spanish, and a lot of different things culturally from the Arabs that influenced people in Spain. And I mean, there's a lot there, right? And so
Andalusia, Cordoba, a lot of things probably.
All of the things, right? So when I'm learning about this stuff, I already learned about it in college. So it's not like coming out of nowhere. And I also can appreciate the fact that like the Bible is in a language, whether it's in English or Latin, or that was not the language spoken at the time of Jesus. So for me as a linguist, for me as a language expert, I can't believe in something that has been translated, down the river, however many times. Like it's just, how can I put my eternity on that, right? So I had this book and I read through it, and it was just like, page after page after page, and then me doing my research and like looking at the Bible and like seeing the quotes, and then around this same time, my husband, again, we weren't married at the time, but he's like, he noticed that I could memorize songs in Arabic very easily, even though I didn't know what I was talking about.
I see.
Okay, so he made me a mixtape. I'm gonna like totally date myself. He made me a mixtape of like Arabic music. And then all of a sudden I'm like singing that Arabic music, and he's like, him and his friends are like, how in the world do you even know what you're saying? And I'm like, no. They're like, we don't even know that song. How, how did you memorize like Amr Diab and like this different singers? So at that time, he tells me, he's like, I'm gonna give you something better to memorize. And if you say this 10 times every night before you go to bed, Allah's gonna build you a house in paradise. So he teaches me Surat Al-Ikhlas. So I'm not even Muslim at this point, okay? So every single night before I go to bed, I'm like, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu samad. And I'm saying this. So do you think it's a coincidence that I am saying this every single night, 10 times a night for like a month? And then at the end of that kind of period, I asked him, I was like, how do you become Muslim? And he said, well, you say the Shahada. I'm like, what's that? So he tells me, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasul. I said, well, I want to be a Muslim. I want to be a Muslim. He's like, right now? Right now. I was like, yes, right now. And so I said my shahada on the way to the gym.
Beautiful.
On the way to the gym. And
so your heart was ready. Your heart was ready.
Well, but I feel like saying that particular surah every single night, it cleansed my heart. Like the Quran has a medicinal quality to it, right? By Allah's grace. And so, you know, I think that also shows you the testament of like smart dawah. Because when I became a Muslim, I was fully convinced there is only one God. And I was fully convinced that Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the last messenger. I had not thought about the hijab. I had not thought about stopping drinking. I had all of those things were not even in my immediate purview.
That's very smart dawah.
It is smart dawah. Unfortunately, what we do is we overcomplicate and think a person has to fix and correct every single thing in their life before they become Muslim. And no, it's like, this is why people like me and you, Maruf, we have to lead the charge in talking to people about Islam because we understand sales and marketing. And Islam has a sales and marketing problem.
That's true. Not a product problem.
No, it doesn't. It's like,
product is great. Product is great.
Yeah. How are we talking about Islam with people, right? Like, why do we make it so complicated? Why do we use terminology that isn't even English? Like words like revert. I mean, this is like the playbook of how to make our religion sound like a cult. Just use language that people are familiar with. Absolutely. You know, we don't need to engineer.
By listening to your story, right? I just makes so much sense. So what you were, even by not knowingly, right? Even by remembering Al-Ikhlas is one of the powerful chapters. Is that they say that it's about the oneness of God, right? Basically, it's about independence of God. And this is where you had the foundation. Once you have the foundation, you can do anything you want. Instead of putting all those things together, then try to go to foundation, it doesn't work. And it makes so much sense.
Or justify not drinking or justify that is so unnecessary. Down the line. And like, I mean, so for example, like, you know, we have the community closet at Baraka Beauty, and it's a closet full of clothing that's free for new Muslims. And I have sisters come in all the time for stuff, and I'm like, do you know how to pray? Some of them don't know how to pray. Like, okay, alhamdulillah, take a hijab, but this is not the most important thing. What's more important is you said the shahada. The next thing is to learn salah. Allah says in the Quran to establish the prayer, establish the salah. He doesn't say establish the hijab, yani. You know? So I'm not saying,
you know, by listening to your story, again, it's something that just coming to my mind is like exactly what happened to you in that order. Because a lot of things, unfortunately, as you said, the Muslims, we don't even know our history. What I mean by that is if you go back to literally study the Prophet's time, right? The first 13 years, what was it about? The same thing.
It was Tawheed.
Oneness of God. Theory of unity.
Afterlife.
You know, the verses about the drinking, verses about everything comes in Medina later on. The same thing, exactly what you said, which makes so much sense. What we expect from people, okay, you say Shahada, here's your dress, from now on, you have to do this. It doesn't make sense. And community, unfortunately, sometimes leave them on their own because we got the Shahada, alhamdulillah, we are happy. Now you're on your own. So it's like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Not just that, Maruf. There's two things. One, a lot of people who are from Muslim families, Muslim cultures, they want to make the converts in their own image.
Yeah, that's true.
So you are fully Muslim if you act like an Egyptian. You are fully Muslim if you act like a Pakistani. You are fully No. These are places that were Islamicized. These are places that, in some cases, like Egypt, it was Arabized. These weren't even Arabs, right? Even some places in the Sham, Palestinian, they weren't Arabs before. They were Arabized, and which is all fine. But I don't have to show up like you look, or you talk, or you act to be fully Muslim.
That's true,
right? And so that's the first mistake. And so what ends up happening, I don't know if you know this, but for every 10 women who become Muslim in America, 7 of those women leave Islam.
SubhanAllah.
And it's really like death by 1,000 cuts. And part of it is not allowing people space to come into Islam bringing their whole self into Islam, whatever that is, the good, bad, and the ugly, and working things out over a process, over a period of time. That person is an adult and they said, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. We believe this is a very heavy phrase, right? We are taught this very heavy phrase. Let a person sit in that. Let a person sit in that and help them understand who is that Allah that you now believe in, that you are worshiping. Then all the other things will come in time. It took me 6 months to learn how to pray. This is before YouTube channels. This is before all the things. And this is the other thing too. And Sheikh Rasul said this. There is a beauty and a purpose in the struggle, whatever that is, right? And then you get the benefit. And I think this is a lot of the reason why you have so many people becoming Muslim, because of things like the internet. But it's so easy that there's not the struggle. You know, for those of us who became Muslim in like the 90s and the 80s, if we were serious about Islam, what did we have to do? We had to go to the masjid. We had to go find a sheikh, go find a sheikha. I remember driving, you know, I used to drive from one part of our city to the other, like 20, 30 minutes, 2-3 times a week to sit at the feet of our sheikha and learn Islam. There is a beauty in that struggle and that yearning and that going a few times a week. Now I can just click. People are like, oh, is it online? Habibti, there is a beauty in going and sitting in community with people face to face. And also the struggle of the thing, like whether that means you got to pay a little bit of money or you have to drive, you have to find place for your kids to go. There is a beauty in that, and there's a struggle. That struggle is where you're going to get the benefit, and that's exactly what Sheikh Rasul said.
That's what we also appreciate more.
100. You got to have skin in the game. That's sales 101. People don't value things that are free. If everything is free, people don't value it.
We'll get into that, but I'm telling you right away. That's why we need more places like Baraka Beauty. But we'll get to that.
You said it.
But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. Okay, so alhamdulillah, that's a beautiful story. That's your, coming to Islam. Alhamdulillah. So tell us. So I remember you working in a corporate job. I know the Islam that's changed. How you act, how you believe. But did it change you at that time? Let's say where you work as well. I know that later on will come. You do what you do right now. Was it right away, or it took some time, it took some years, etc.? I want to know that phase of transformation as well.
Yeah, so at that time I was working in the telecommunications industry. I was working for a startup that was purchased down the river by like a bunch of large companies, and one of which is Flextronics. They're like the largest contract manufacturer in the world, and they bought the company that I was working for. So I became Muslim at that time. I didn't start wearing the hijab right away. So I became Muslim in November of 99, and I started wearing the hijab in March of 2001. So over a period of time, my dress started changing. I would borrow the keys to the training room to go pray because I worked in a cubicle at that time. So it wasn't a secret that I was Muslim. I just wasn't visibly presenting as a Muslim. I kind of like over time, I started dressing more modestly, tying my hair back, just kind of getting to the point where like when I finally put the hijab, it kind of just all made sense or whatever. But I was definitely not secretly a Muslim. I didn't tell my parents for like, I don't know, maybe like almost a year that I'd become Muslim. And that was some advice by a couple of friends, which actually was the right advice. Because I hadn't quite gotten like comfortable in my own skin yet, which is another mistake that we make with converts. Like people just need to sit in their Islam. They need to sit in their identity. For someone like myself who never considered myself Christian or referred to myself as a Christian, and now I'm identifying as a Muslim, it was really it's hard to wrap your head around that kind of stuff, right? I mean, I remember just saying to myself, Michaela is a Muslim. Like that was really hard to just even verbalize, right? And then now we're like, before I would say God, now I'm saying Allah, and I didn't have like that semantic feeling or meaning with this particular word. So these are like so many little things that people that are born into Islam don't understand that we go through.
It comes naturally. It's by culture.
completely natural. And I remember I was sitting with some new friends of mine who are Somali, and they were, and Somalis, I feel like they're very mashallah, like they're always saying mashallah and subhanallah. They're always saying like all this dhikr Allah. And I remember just like them saying all these things. And I was such a new Muslim. I didn't know how to say anything. I was just so clueless. And I told them, I said, you guys are so lucky. And they're like, why? Like, well, you're born into a Muslim family. And so like, you know how to say mashallah, you know how to say all these things. And I remember one of the sisters turning to me, she's like, no, 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 no. She's like, you're the lucky one. And I said, what? I'm the lucky one? She's like, out of a sea of kuffar, which I hate using that term, but this is what she said. She's like, out of a sea of kuffar, she goes, Allah picked you out and guided you. And what was beautiful about that was that my perspective kind of shifted a little bit. Now, at the end of the day, Allah chose them to be Muslim and you to be Muslim and me to be Muslim. We all just had a different path, right? And just because I always tell people, just because your name is Muhammad does not mean you're going to heaven, my friend. So it has nothing to do with the family you're born into, but it's like your beliefs, right? And there's a lot of kids born in Muslim families, unfortunately, that they just really don't believe in Islam. But that's another conversation. So at that time, I was working my corporate job. I remember even going to Venezuela after I'd become Muslim and having my last drink of alcohol. So these are distinct things that I remember. And I remember bringing my Quran with me to Venezuela, actually, on a business trip. And I felt very like protected. I don't know, subhanAllah. Anyone who's ever flown into Caracas knows that it's a very scary, because it's in like a valley. So you're like nose diving the valley. And then when you're taking off, you're like, it's like very scary. And I don't really like to fly. So I just remember feeling very like, I'm a Muslim, alhamdulillah. Like like God's got me here.
I know where I'm going. Just in case.
I'm good. Everything's fine. But anyway, so it wasn't until I started wearing the hijab that I feel like people's true colors came out, and what they really thought, what they really felt, especially at work, even with my family. That was a lot harder for people, like when you actually are wearing the hijab to like, and I had some people say some really, really messed up things to me at work. And I mean, and like, subhanAllah, alhamdulillah, I have
by then you had your foundation, right? By then you have your support.
Yeah, because I've been Muslim for like a year and a half at this point. So it's like, and I started wearing the hijab about 6 months before 9/11.
Wow.
Yeah. And subhanAllah, like I remember I went to work with the hijab on. Well, first of all, I remember, so subhanAllah, like I told I had two friends, Mauricio and Eddie, they're both Hispanic. And I told them, I was like, I think I'm going to start wearing hijab. And they were like, okay. And I was like, well, do you think I should tell my manager? They're like, no, why would you tell your manager? You're right. And they were like very supportive. That was like on a Friday. Monday comes around and I chicken out. I don't wear the hijab. And they start giving me a hard time in Spanish. They're like, ¿Dónde está la taparrama? Where's your head cover? I'm like, I went home on my lunch break and I picked out the most not black hijab that I had, which happened to be like a dark gray one. Okay, so I was like the only other color I had. I pick out this hijab. It's dark gray. It has like beading on it. And I am like so nervous. I drive back to work. I drive to the back of the parking lot. I enter from the back door. I slip into my cube. I'm like, my heart is like racing. And because everyone was using like Hotmail Messenger at that point. I don't know if you remember that. So I Hotmail Messenger one of my coworkers, Michelle, and I was like,
MSN, it was called MSN something.
Oh, MSN Messenger, that's right. So I'm like, Michelle, stand up, turn around, don't freak out or something. Stands up, she looks, because she's in the cube right next to me. And she's like, what? I was like, she was like, so what? I was like, okay. I think I can do this. And subhanAllah, like I had one guy who I worked with, he took one look at me. He's like, you belong in the Middle East. I was like, okay, bro. And then I had gone to work. I think it was like the next day, my manager was out of the office. The next day she comes in and she's like, Michaela, come here. And so I go to her cubicle and I'm wearing the hijab, you know, I was like, what? She's like, is it a Muslim? Or she said it was like Muslim, you know, is it a Muslim holiday today? And I look at her, I was like, no. And then I just left. I didn't even allow her to ask me anything after that. And she's like, Michaela, come back here. I was like, what? She's like, did you get baptized? And I said, no. And I just took off again. I just didn't want to get into like back
conversation, yeah.
You know? And then I remember I was at the front desk and there was two of the receptionists were Mormon and they were like very, very, very practicing Mormons. Okay. Like they wore the undergarments, like they were very practicing Mormons. And I was up there talking to them and one of the controller came, Cindy, and I could tell she was like looking at me, like kind of giving me like some side eye. And she's like, Michaela, are you preparing for something? So I look at her and I was like, yeah, the end of the world. And then I walked off. She's probably like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? I think my IT manager, he asked me like, did you get married? I was like, no. Again, anybody asked me a question, I just answer the question and then I left because I didn't want to even engage with people. I think the most interesting question I got when I was wearing the hijab at work, there was this one of our directors, Japanese American, like very nice person, but he didn't give me the time of day ever. Like he never talked to me at all. So one day, because you know he's in a high level position, and who am I? I'm just like a lowly person working in client services. So I'm outside. I'm like looking for some files in this file cabinet, and he sees me, and he comes out of his office. You know, his office behind the glass. You know, and he's like, can I help you with that? And I was like, okay, this is very odd because I've never even talked to you before. So he is literally on his hands and knees digging in this file cabinet for me, looking for files. And he looks up at me and he goes, can I ask you a question? And I was like, you know, that's always when something comes out, right? I said, yeah, sure. He goes, why are you wearing that? And then before I could even answer, he goes, are you commemorating a certain period of history? I thought to myself, I'm not like reenacting like, you know, the Civil War over here or something, you know. Oh my God, that was so funny. But and then there's been in the very beginning, it wasn't too bad, but I've had people make physical threats to me at work.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been, but luckily I'm strong and resilient, but you know, not everybody is. So it's not easy wearing the hijab in America, you know, for a lot of people. They get in their head, you know, like what's going to happen to me. And, you know,
it takes a lot of courage, honestly.
It does take a lot of courage. We're like a sitting duck at that point, right? So
especially your women and especially men begin to do all the stuff. It gets really crazy. My question is it the main reason you kind of were thinking of leaving that job, doing something else? Those kind of comments, or what happened? If you just
like when I left corporate America and focused on my brand and then started beauty. Yeah, you know, because of the pandemic, like so that I had started a new job in 2020 and I was really excited about it, and then COVID hit, like literally COVID hit like 2 weeks after I started. That's when George Floyd happened. Like there was all of this things happening in our country, right? And I realized working there, and then ultimately I got fired because my manager like gamed the performance management system to fire me. I was like, you know what? I'm just a white lady in a hijab, man. You guys are, if I'm on the receiving end of all these like microaggressions.
Can you imagine others?
Yeah, everybody. I think about like I used to have all these Black employees that would come to me for coaching conversations that weren't even on my team. Like I was a sales director, okay, and I would have people in our company who were African American and also people from the LGBTQIA plus community coming to me for coaching conversations because they didn't feel safe talking to their own managers.
I see.
And these are people that are working in the delivery side of things, and I'm in sales. And I'm thinking to myself, nobody else in the company is safe to you except for the lady wearing the hijab, the white lady wearing the hijab. To me, that's a problem, because that means that this organization is not safe for people and it's all performance. And then when I got fired, I was just like, oh, hell no, I cannot keep doing this. I can't be somebody else's passive income.
Yeah, you're somebody else's dream.
Yeah, I'm passive income for somebody who is pro-Israel, somebody who is like does not represent my best interest, let alone the best interests of these employees that continue to come to me. I can't support that, you know? And like, I remember this one young woman named Zuri, after George Floyd, like she called me, she's like, Michaela, I can't talk to anybody about, no one understands why this is so hard for us in the Black community. And I'm like, I'm not from the Black community, obviously, but you know, she did not even feel like she couldn't go to her manager and be like, I need a couple days off. Like, and I told her, I was like, the only thing that I can relate to is like when a Muslim does something crazy in the world, all of us are like collectively feeling like that.
Too many people saying, sorry, we did that, sorry.
Exactly, right? And so, you know, I just realized that and then I looked back and I'm like, oh my God, there's been so many incidences where, and that was actually, there's one company that I worked for called People Firm. And I fully believe it's because their CEO is a woman, and she very much had a very intentional like purpose and creating a very intentional culture in the organization. That is the only company that I ever worked at in my 20 plus year career that I was not harassed for being a Muslim, sexually harassed, or both. One company at a 20 plus year career, subhanAllah. So when I decided not to go back to corporate America, I was like, I want to build something that people can be who they truly are, and they can, you know, this is the thing. Like I worked in the HR field for a long period of time, selling consulting and research into that industry. And, you know, all these HR people talk about, oh, bring your authentic self to work. No, you guys are just lying. And a bunch of white people are saying, oh, bring your authentic self to work. But I'm telling you, the white lady has to dumb down the Muslimness. This woman over here has to, you know, be less Black or Hispanic or whatever their backgrounds are. So I just don't believe that. And so I want to create a space, which I feel like we definitely have in a lot of ways at Baraka Beauty, where people can be fully Muslim, fully Arab, fully whatever they are, and it's okay. And I just can't go back to that performance. I cannot go back. And in fact, I did a podcast with one of my old coworkers, Roger, who I adore, and we were talking about this, and I told him, I said, I'm going to tell you everything that I couldn't tell you before, Roger. And he's like, why is that? I go, well, because you can't fire me. I don't work for you. I don't work for you, so I don't have to worry about you firing me.
Makes sense. So tell us about where we are coming back to. I think to the Baraka Beauty, right? This is where it is. So tell us about now. Now we're starting talking about when it started, how it started, but tell us what Baraka Beauty is today and what it stands for, what it does. Then we can discuss the other parts of that, because I know it means a lot of things. Under Baraka Beauty, you have do many things. I understand though why you tried this, because you have been on the other end, you've been on the receiving end, all of this. You want to create a place where, you know, people are welcome, especially in this case, the ladies and Muslim ladies as well, of course. Yep. Tell us about that, the Baraka Beauty. It's called, full name is Baraka Beauty Collective, is it correct?
Yeah, Baraka Beauty Collective. So it's a collective, meaning it's a collective of individual businesses. So Baraka Beauty Collective, we started about 3.5 years ago. And we are a social enterprise focused on uplifting Muslim women primarily and our allies and those in that ecosystem to launch and grow their businesses. And we help women especially sort of use their different parts of their cultural heritage, you know, whether it's in beauty rituals or art, and turn those passions, many of which are rooted in cultural heritage, into businesses, right? And so Baraka Beauty Collective today, we have, I mean, how many entrepreneurs do we have? We have probably about full-time, maybe like 10 of us. And we are in, I'm the fashion person. So we have a couple fashion businesses, not just mine. We have a wellness business. We have a fitness business. We have a variety of beauty businesses, and we all operate in one space. And that space is Baraka Beauty Collective. So my modest fashion brand was the anchor business that started Baraka Beauty Collective. And because we are a space that's ran by women for women, we just don't do things like other spaces in the Muslim community. But I think that's where the khair and baraka is, that's where we have grown to where we're at. And, I think a lot of the Muslim community, unfortunately, thinks about, well, something is either a for-profit or it's a non-profit. And Baraka Beauty is a space where everything lives in one place. We have a little bit of for-profit, a little bit of non-profit, meaning, the collective space, the platform that we have created, the physical platform, the physical space, is a nonprofit. And then all of the businesses inside are for-profit. And Baraka Beauty helps amplify each individual business. Baraka Beauty hosts a lot of cultural events, a lot of community events, with accommodating Muslim women at the forefront. But what we realize is that in accommodating Muslim women, we end up accommodating a lot of women because the Muslim community is so diverse, right? It's the most diverse religious community in America. Because of that, when we are creating space that uplifts all these different cultural groups within the Muslim community and making sure that Muslim women specifically feel safe, all these other communities also feel safe. So we have like a blossoming group of like Latina women that are coming into Baraka Beauty and launching their businesses, and they're not even Muslim. Now they might share our values, but it also is beneficial because I speak Spanish, and some of the women, either they don't speak English or they don't speak English very well. And so they've been able to come in and really feel supported. And they also are the women that have come into Baraka Beauty that are Latina, that are not Muslim. We've supported Latina Muslims as well, in the food industry and others. But these women, they share our values, and they're very much focused on, teamwork and, understanding that like what they give to the space, what they give to the collective, they will get in return. And it's this very collaborative environment. And I just really believe, and I believe this for a very long time, that we're just stronger together. We're stronger than our individual parts. And I talk about like 1 + 1 is 3, or 1 + 1 is 10. It's not 1 + 1 is 2 in Baraka Beauty. And it's interesting because it's really an ecosystem, a social enterprise and an ecosystem. So if someone comes in to buy something from me, they're naturally going to see the other entrepreneurs. And they're like, oh, you guys have hijama, you have acupuncture, you do hair, there's a private hair salon, you do fitness events. Oh my God, you do henna, this, you have a night with sisters singing nasheed. Yeah, we do all these things, right? SubhanAllah. And what's interesting is that a lot of the community events that we put on, the entrepreneurs in the space, they help create those community events. Beautiful. And then in those community events, they bring in new potential customers.
For everybody. So
it's just, from a business perspective, it's brilliant.
Makes so much sense.
It's brilliant from a business perspective, but it also is something where you're giving back to the community, and that's where the khair and baraka is. And I always think about, when the message first came to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and all the people of Mecca that were not Muslim, what were they fearful of? They were fearful that Prophet Muhammad was going to change the religion and nobody would come for the pilgrimage. But guess what happened? Even more people came for pilgrimage when Islam came. And so that is, to me, the underlying current of it. It's like, even in everything that we do, I'm like, okay, you cut hair. Why don't you do some free haircuts for some of our refugee people or sisters in need? It's that sadaqah, it's that zakat you're paying on your service. That's why I give away a certain amount of my clothing to new Muslims for the same reason. It's like the pruning of the tree, right? That's why, like Asia, who's one of the co-founders, she does acupuncture and hijama. She does a community acupuncture event once a month where it's a sliding scale and women can get acupuncture for a not like a percentage of what a normal appointment would cost. That's her
Beautiful.
paying the sadaqah or zakah on her service. So those are
Beautiful.
things that we encourage people to do. But in reality, it also just has a business benefit. So subhanAllah.
I mean, look, I just still wonder. I've never heard such an idea. Am I the only one that, or actually it doesn't exist?
It doesn't exist. So again, I think that we think about, my cat is like screaming in the background.
That's all right.
She caught a fake mouse. She caught a toy, and then she's like really excited. Mimi, are you done? So what's interesting is that, okay, yes, there's a couple places in the States where there's like a, women only salon. There's a place in New York, and there's like independent little businesses. But this idea of a bunch of businesses coming together and sharing a space and working together to uplift everybody, it absolutely does not exist. Now, I know that there's a place in California where they like rented a space and people rent rooms and rent whatever down in Southern California, but it's not the collective model that we have. Because yes, people sub-rent from Baraka Beauty to have their space, but I hope, like Baraka Beauty, we host every single person's business on our website. We are doing emails and doing email marketing. People, the women who are in the Baraka Beauty space, they get Michaela's like coaching as part of what they're paying for. Like this is something that other people, you go and you rent space from this place in Southern California, or how much are they actually helping you to make your business successful? I would say probably close to nothing, because they really only care about getting the rental. You succeed, you fail, you just pay me rent, best khalas. But for me, a great example is like we have a newer entrepreneur. Her name is Samira. She's Iraqi, immigrant, refugee from 20 years ago, and she launched her seamstress tailoring business in Baraka Beauty. One of my team members, who's also Iraqi American, she sat with Samira for 4 hours. She helped her open her business license. She helped her create a logo. She helped her get her booking site together. And we did that to help uplift her. So, those are things that we will do for people that come into the space. So, I mean, no one is doing that. And also the events that we do. SubhanAllah, during the month of Ramadan, 4 weeks, we have 8 events.
Wow. So you know what? I'm just thinking out loud here. What you're doing is great for business, great for community, right? Great for dawah. Think about it. All of them.
People become Muslim in Baraka Beauty, Maruf. They come in to buy and then they're saying, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah.
And then you also support new Muslims with the clothing. You mentioned the clothes project. I mean, just saying is like, that's such a beautiful project.
Yeah.
It is such a beautiful project, Michael. I really mean, I'm just trying to, I don't have to pamper you. I'm not saying to just nice things. I'm just really believing that this idea, you need to figure out how to franchise and replicate whatever it is. It has to be in every state.
On right now, it
has to be on every state. It has to be in every city. We need Baraka Beauty.
Yeah, and
that's your thing, Michael. You have to do that. There's nobody else is gonna do that. That's your calling. I'm telling you.
It is my calling. I would say that it's a culmination of my 20+ year career, my background I have an MBA too, which we didn't even get to, but my education background, my background working in research, my background working in sales, my background working in leadership development and all the human aspects, emotional intelligence, diversity, equity, inclusion, all the things that I used to do within those space, all the community work I did, all the dawah stuff, all the convert support. It's literally all of it in one space. But I mean, that is the literal beauty. Like, subhanAllah, like somebody will come in who's a new Muslim, and they never heard about the fact that we have a closet. They will sit in Noura's chair and get their hair cut. And Noura will be like, oh, are you a convert? And they'll be like, yeah, I became Muslim 6 months ago. Well, did you know we have a free closet? No, I didn't. Well, did you know that our founder is a convert? No. Well, you should talk to Michaela, right? Or like we've had sisters who, you know, are interested in getting married, and they're like, oh, I'm interested in this guy. Well, maybe we can help you, right? Like, this is, subhanAllah, it's just this beautiful, it's a beautiful, beautiful ecosystem. That's all that I can say. It's an ecosystem, because the entry point for everybody is different, but there's just so much khair and barakah that is multiplied for every single thing. I mean, that's the thing too. Like, people don't understand. Like, I swear to God, I cannot tell you how many times somebody has come in to get free clothing from the closet, who's like, let's say, a new Muslim. Today, she's getting some things for free from the closet, and tomorrow she's spending $300, $400, $500, $1,000, $2,000, $5,000, $10,000 with me, with my brand.
Yep. Because it's a trust, right? It's the awareness, it's trust, it's everything.
The focus that I have in Baraka Beauty is not about the transactional thing you have with a customer. It's looking at the lifetime and the bigger picture with any individual person, whether they're Muslim, not Muslim, whatever. And this is one of the things that a lot of the women benefit a lot from me kind of being at the helm, is that the customer service angle of it. Like, if you go to Baraka Beauty Collective on Google, you'll see we have like however many 5-star reviews, and even my brand, all 5-star reviews. Why? Customer service, customer. This is the thing about Baraka Beauty. Yes, we're a nonprofit now because of how much stuff we do to support all these different women in the community and everything. But and this is where a lot of misogyny go wrong in other organizations like that. Stop acting like you're doing the community a favor. We might be doing a lot of benefit in the community, but when people come in, I don't care if they come for halaqah, I don't care if they come for a henna event, or they come for iftar. We have to meet or exceed their expectation. I don't care if they paid $5 for something, they paid nothing, or they paid $500. We have to treat them, because at the end of the day, even if they paid nothing, they spent their time, their energy to come into our space, and we have to respect that. So when someone goes to the masjid, I don't care if they're just going there to make salah. We have to treat them in a customer service way. And that is one of the things that we do not do correctly in our community. And this is also why people like you and me, Maruf, we have to lead the charge in a lot of these things. Sales and marketing. Like, one of our best imams here, his background was in client services, and that is why he's beloved in our community.
He knows how to take care of people.
He knows how to talk to people. He knows how to meet them where they're at. He's not talking over them or patronizing them. No. And he's respectful, right? So anyone comes into Baraka Beauty, I don't care what you look like. I'll give you a really good example that happened 2 days ago. Somebody donated a bunch of stuff to us, to Baraka Beauty, so that we can resell it to make money. A bunch of like designer purses. I have a lady message me on Facebook Marketplace, and she wants to buy a bunch of purses from Baraka Beauty. I said, okay, fine. So I told her to come into the store and you can look at everything we have. MashaAllah, the woman is not Muslim. Okay, she's middle-aged Vietnamese woman. She is an admin for one of our local community colleges.
Beautiful.
And first of all, she comes into Baraka Beauty. She's like, oh my God, what is this place? It is absolutely beautiful inside. Aesthetically, the masajid, why everything needs to be clean, organized, beautiful. This is also why you need women at the forefront of like decorating the masjid. That is more, when someone comes in, whether they're Muslim or not, oh my God, Allah, where am I? She was like, this is such a gorgeous, beautiful place. Wow. She's looking around at all the jewelry that I make. She's like, I am like in a candy shop right now. So that is her impression of Islam, of the Muslims, because
first impression. That's what I'm
Beautiful.
saying. This is a very, very soft, beautiful version of Dawa. And this is why I'm saying this has to be in every state, in every city. I mean it, honestly.
We're gonna make it happen.
Michael, thank you for your time, for sharing your story and about Baraka Beauty and all the wonderful things you do. Please tell the listeners or watchers, viewers, we call them, where they can find more about Baraka Beauty, about your brand, about other wonderful projects you're doing, inshallah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely go to the website for barakabeautycollective.com. And our Instagram is also barakabeautycollective.com. And then for my brand, which is Michaela Corning, you can find us online, Instagram, Michaela Corning, michaelacorning.com. Very easy, very straightforward. I would definitely encourage people, the women especially, we all have way too much clothes. Go into your wardrobe, take out the things that you don't wear anymore, especially the things that are modest, and send them to the Baraka Community Closet. We get donations from all over the country, and those donations end up going to new Muslims and to sisters in need, refugees, DV survivors, and many of the things we also have been starting to upcycle and turn into new pieces of clothing that we are selling to help support Baraka Beauty because we are a nonprofit. So I encourage folks to do that. Subscribe to our emails. You can learn all about the things that we're doing.
Sounds good. And one last thing I want to say about the modest fashion brand, the michaelacorning.com, is again, you have to check it out what it is. But from what I understood is the Michaela's vision is to once you go, you will see most of the things she does actually made locally in America by the ladies that work with her. And another thing I remember, Michael, and you can correct me on that, is that sometimes what you do, overstocks, you take the overstocks from the well-known brand and you make them beautiful hijabs and other things. So look, maybe I'm not the best guy to promote it, but what I'm saying is you have to go and check it out. If you are Muslim women, you have to go and check it out. It's a one of a kind.
So what I would say is that my brand is a much more sustainable option to what is out there in the market right now. One, we definitely lead with what I would call an American Muslim vibe. We've definitely created an American Muslim culture, and that is what my fashion really lends itself to, is that American Muslim vibe. It is sustainable because we use overstock fabric. So I take overstock fabric from designers and brands that are very well known, like Lululemon, Patagonia, DKNY. Take their overstock fabric and turn it into modest fashion, turn it into hijabs, tunics, abayas, you name it. So we're definitely creating things that are a cultural fusion as well. So a lot of times people can't even tell where that thing is from because it's an amalgamation of multiple cultural groups, which is definitely the American Muslim experience, right? As an amalgamation of many different cultures. I mean, Maruf, you would probably say you're Canadian and also Uzbeki. And also Muslim, right? And that's really what we are going after is people who understand that as carbon-based life forms, we represent a lot of different cultures. And it's all sewn in Seattle. So that's an amazing thing where we're not only paying people fair wages, but we're employing people locally in our community and providing life-changing opportunities for women who, don't want to go work out in those streets. One of my seamstresses, she's not Muslim, and she's like, because she works for me full time, she doesn't have to be a bartender. She can be at home with her son, and she's a freelance seamstress. So anyway, those are the kind of things that we're doing at the brand. It's very, very different, and it's very limited quantity. So if I make it abaya, I might make 5, I might make 10, and that's it. And so you're getting something that's truly unique and that I see as a heritage piece that you can pass down to your kids, your daughters, your granddaughters, and that makes it a lot more meaningful than fast fashion. So
thanks so much, Michaela. We also put Baraka in Baraka Beauty and Michaela Corning, other good projects you do. And I hope people will enjoy this episode and talk to you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Bye, Maru.